Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero show with me, your host Simon Conboy. And today I'm doing a game review of one of probably going to go down as one of the best games of this NFL season, as the Oakland Raiders defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 31-30 on a last second touchdown pass to Michael Crabtree. This was a fascinating game heading in. Chiefs coming off their first loss, the Raiders really needing a win or they'd be way behind the 8 ball at the bottom of the AFC West. And this one was really good throughout. It was a real back and forth affair. Either team could have won this one and wouldn't really have too many complaints about it. A very, very good contest. This was the Raiders team we were expecting to see this year, and we saw in week 1, and that was about it. Amari Cooper remembered that he's an NFL player, so that was really good and ended up being the catalyst really for that victory. And the Chiefs showing some, maybe, I wouldn't even necessarily say signs of weakness. They did get some breaks in this game, particularly the amount of dropped interceptions that Alex Smith had, keeping that no interception record going. But it was a heck of a game. Really enjoyed this one and very happy to analyse this one for you. As always, not really too much of a focus on stats, what I saw with my own 2 eyes and how I feel about these 2 teams moving forward. So yeah, let's get into this. I mean, this one started off well. The Chiefs looked very much offensively like they have most of the season. My one complaint with them would be Travis Kelce not involved nearly enough in this offense, limited to only 3 catches, which is very surprising, and he just wasn't targeted that often. It felt like he had a really good matchup in this game. I did say for the Raiders to win in my game preview, they had to keep him quiet. They managed to do that, and that was one of the big things. But they managed to move down the field, get themselves a 3-0 lead. Kareem Hunt running the ball pretty well. It was pretty standard fare from the Chiefs this year. A lot of catches by running backs in this one. But the Raiders, they managed to answer. They've been very sluggish starting games this year. And Amari Cooper, after a terrible 3 or 4 weeks, managing to get involved early and often in this one, catching a deep ball down the left sideline from Derek Carr, who looked far easily his best performance of the season. Both teams had some drops. Carr in particular had some big ones over the course of this game that let the side down, and Cooper responsible for a couple of those, but you'll forgive him when he has a performance like this. Managed to make a great job keeping his feet in bounds after making the catch down the sideline to give this Raiders team the lead. It's particularly impressive because the Raiders didn't have much in the way of the run game. Bit of a strange situation when Marshawn Lynch managed to get himself ejected in this one. The Chiefs were being surprisingly chippy in this one. They've had a bit of an edge to them all season, and this game there were times where it threatened to boil over. It seemed the ejection actually did its job and kind of calmed both of these teams down somewhat. Feel a bit bad for Lynch because Peters did deliver a cheap shot, and Lynch put his hands on a ref, and that's the way the rules are, and it's fair enough. I thought it was a bit unfortunate that, of course, that stymied the run game a little. The 2 backups, Washington, not able to get a huge amount going. They were more effective in the pass game, but again, a couple of drops that did stall the Raiders at times. But generally, they moved the ball pretty consistently through the air over the course of the night. Most of that going through the tight end position. Jared Cook had a big day. Few key catches from Crabtree, but he was kept pretty quiet. And when that's been the case this year, this offense has looked bad. But Cooper really did make up for it with a real comeback game from him. The Chiefs starting to struggle to make those big plays defensively. There's a couple of weeks in a row now where they've been somewhat limited. This is probably the best performance from the Raiders offensive line in terms of pass protection. D Ford and Justin Houston were both able to generate pressure pretty reasonably well off the edge, as you'd expect. They're high-end players, but for the most part, Carr had a pretty clean pocket to work with. next to no rush up the middle. One of the quietest games Chris Jones has had all year. Those guys all did their job well against the run, but the Chiefs were fairly conservative, and Derek Carr was able to carve them up. I just expected to see some more exotic looks from this team. Really try and go after an offense that's looked a little bit out of sync lately. But I think, frankly, the fact that they were quite conservative in this one played into the Raiders' hands, allowed them to get rhythm early, get Carr looking good, get Cooper in the game, and everything just kind of flowed for them significantly better than it had over the last few weeks. They were able to get key conversions, and I think it's offensively by far the best they've looked. Still some issues defensively with this team. The secondary concerns me. Don't get me wrong, Chiefs had a degree of luck in this one. The Raiders probably did end up edging this game, so probably a fair result. But I think teams have twigged. The Chiefs are in some ways difficult to defend, but in others they're easy because they've got their big three, and if you can take away an element of those and quieten down another, then that's what we've seen the last couple of weeks. That they don't necessarily have the guys outside of that to offer a huge amount of threat. Alex Smith's numbers look really good in this game. This is why I hate numbers, but he easily could have thrown a couple of picks. One which was an absolute gimme, ended up being a huge touchdown pass to, I believe it was to Albert Wilson. Should have been picked by the safety. He ends up just tipping it up into the air. Walk-in touchdown from there at a key point in the game. And there were just a couple other big drops that could have been simple interceptions that really could have swung the game in the Raiders' favour earlier on. So not his best performance of the year. It did hit on some big plays. Tyreek Hill, once again having a game-breaking touchdown, was kept under wraps outside of this play. I think this is where the Raiders did a very good job defensively. Kelsey, I don't know if it was by design, but he just didn't ever feel like a big factor in this one, and Hill got his long touchdown. I said they would have to take their chances with him, and they did, but the Chiefs didn't seem too happy going to that well too often. May have been something that they end up regretting, because I think Hill did have the beating of this secondary. He did get lit up at one point on the sideline by Joseph. Whether that had an impact maybe on their decisions and how to use him, I'm not so sure. But back to this stage of the game, that put the Chiefs ahead. Both teams struggling to really get too much going on the ground. So what it did feel like it was kind of down to these quarterbacks, and frankly both secondaries struggled to contain guys. Saw a fairly similar look, both teams getting really strong protection. I think the Raiders in particular able to generate very little pressure until right at the end of the game when Khalil Mack, because of course he does, right at the end of the game gets half a sack, but he made the majority of the play to enable it, and that ended up setting up the last drive. So still got a lot of reservations about this Raiders defence. I thought Navarro Bowman looked like a nice addition in this one. He managed to get a really important hit on a blitz, and he's just, he's going to be in the right places, even if he's not quite the force that he was 3 or 4 years ago. I think he brings. It was an excellent pickup for this team. I think you're going to see a lot more leadership, and once he gets more to grips with the way this defence plays, I think you'll see more of a leadership position given to him, and he'll demonstrate that. And I think you see less breakdowns because this team has been sloppy at times defensively, and last night that wasn't really the case. They just struggled with a pretty talented group, but much better performance against the run than we've seen after what Melvin Gordon did to them last week. I really expected them to struggle with Kareem Hunt, but they kept him fairly quiet. It's a couple of games in a row where I think they need to start spelling Hunt a little more. Otherwise, I just think with the amount he's been utilised, you're going to start to see him wearing down towards the end of the season. So I think Charkandrick West's a fine player, can do a lot of the same things in the passing game. I think they need to mix that up a little bit more. Hunt looks a little to me, he's still running well, but I think he could do with a bit of a rest. But the run blocking's not been as good the last few weeks. I think teams have kind of got to grips a little with a lot of what this Chiefs team is looking to do running the ball, and they're committing more men to it. I think it's leaving spaces in behind, but the Chiefs aren't quite able to take advantage due to the receiving core not being the deepest. Amari Cooper, though, continued to make plays in this one. He looked uncoverable one-on-one. At times, he looks like a mini Antonio Brown in terms... Actually, no, more like AJ Green in terms of what he can offer. A good jump ball receiver who's got that quickness that you don't necessarily expect from a guy with his kind of stature. And he's able to... What makes him really effective, and you saw it in this game, is his ability to just beat guys on the inside if they're playing him straight up. But he's then also got the ability to take them to the outside, and even if they're in good position, make a play on the ball. And he's not shown that over these last few weeks. And there's been spates of this over his early career, where sometimes it doesn't always look like he's giving maximum effort on some of these jump balls down the field, or like he wants the ball quite enough. But yesterday we saw a bit of that. A couple of drops again. His hands still don't seem to be quite there. But between him and Cook, this offense got a real boost. I thought Carr played an excellent game. Made good decisions pretty constantly for a couple of questionable deep balls over the course of the game, but far more aggressive, I think, than we've seen him. I think he knew he was going to have to take chances. As much as I've been somewhat critical of this Chiefs offense, they were able to move the ball for the vast majority of the game, but I think at the end that's where we saw their inability to really establish a run game on this team. Cost them 2 opportunities to kill this game at the end, weren't able to put either of them away. Ended up being, of course, hugely significant, and certainly could be come the end of the season. I mean, defensively for the Chiefs, I'm not a fan of how they played this one. I really feel like the Raiders were somewhat there for the taking on the offensive side, and fast start for the Raiders. Sort of, I think when they started to sputter a little in the third quarter, rather than sort of collapsing in there, like, well, they've had success over the course of the game, kind of just stuck with it. I feel like if the Chiefs had been able to get on them early, maybe get a big play, a big sack or an interception, it's one of those where sometimes the momentum just carries on for the rest of the game and ends up going in the Raiders' favour. A lot of iffy stuff, I think, from the Chiefs. I mean, really, the prevent defence is something I've always had umbrage with, particularly if a team is having a lot of success attacking the intermediate areas of the field, or has the talent in the receiving core and a quarterback like the Raiders do to try and play prevent. I prefer my chances, frankly, of just playing straight up good defence, putting some pressure on the quarterback, particularly when you've got the front and the ability blitzing that this Chiefs team does. I like my chances more of that than just sitting off and giving. I mean, how many? And of course, there were a lot of penalties that extended this game, but to give the Raiders 4 or 5 opportunities at the end zone without really having earned them to win the game is not something I personally agree with, and I get it's kind of the logic of coaching for most NFL teams, but sometimes it does feel to me like playing not to lose, and Andy Reid is a guy accused of that as much as anybody, frankly, and I think we saw that at the end. The Chiefs just tried to go into total run mode at the end of the game, in spite of the fact they'd had very little success with it over the course of this one. That failed 2 drives running, and then went into a prevent, and as a result they lost. Touchdown at the end was far too easy. You know, at the goal line, Crabtree's the most likely target. I think to give up just that, physical, then get physical, break outside, kind of flat route, give it up so easily has to be disappointing on the last play of the game, because maybe they're playing the fade, but I think I'd rather give up the potential for the fade, because it's a far more difficult throw and catch than what the Raiders ended up having to do. It was a good hard throw, like low hard throw by Carr, but not a fan fan of the coaching from the Chiefs at the end of this one. It really did look like they had this game on ice midway through the fourth quarter. Just need to do something with the ball, and unfortunately got too conservative for my liking. I understand running the ball, I know the logic behind it, but if you're struggling with it, I think you've got to try and mix things up, especially when you've got a guy like Travis Kelce, who I think you can go to in those big moments, especially when he's been bottled up for a large chunk of the game. I think you're going to have a shot to him, especially with the way Alex Smith has been moving, and there wasn't a huge amount of pressure from the Raiders throughout this contest. Maybe one of them bootlegs, getting Kelce on like a corner route, that could have been an option. But either way, this was a really, really good passing performance from both of these teams. Still feel good about this Chiefs team. I mean, yes, they lost this game, but they lost to a Raiders team that was playing much more like we expected. They lost to the Steelers last week, and that Steelers team is different to what we expected, but I still feel like they're a good team. But the consistency's there with this Chiefs team. The talent is still there. I think they'll be able to pick themselves up, and I still think they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams probably in the NFL, definitely within the AFC, but probably within the league at this stage. As for the Raiders, I feel like they need to get these performances from the offensive line. Last year that was the strength of the team. It's not been the case enough this year. So hopefully this will be signalling a return to form for them, because frankly, they even with the struggles running the ball, they looked far better than they have at any point this season, other than maybe week 1 where I thought they looked good against the Titans. Next week though, big week for the Chiefs. They've got the Broncos. What a game that should be. That's basically going to be for the top of that division. So really, really looking forward to that one. That one, of course, huge. Even after these 2 losses, if the Chiefs can win that one, they'll be 6-2. They'll be top of the AFC West. They'll be feeling good about themselves. As for the Raiders, they've got to try and keep the momentum going, because it still feels like there's a bit of a slog back behind those 2 teams. And they've got, because I can't remember off the top of my head, and they've got the Chargers. No, they don't. Of course not. They only played last week. They've got the Bills. Ooh, that's going to be an interesting one. Bills team looking pretty good defensively, so it'll be another challenge for Carr and the Raiders. If they can do a job these next couple of weeks, they've got the Dolphins after that. 2 of the best top 10 defenses in the league, in my opinion, based on what I've seen of the games this year, because I've watched all of their games. 2 of the top 10 defenses. If the Raiders can keep this going, having just played this well against the Chiefs, I will be I'll be pretty convinced that this is a team capable of going on a run defensively. Just see them hold it together, because the 2 teams they've got, they're not that great. But yeah, this was a great game. Still buzzing about it a little. I just enjoy good football, and that's what this was. Some might be critical, like how I was reviewing the Buccaneers-Cardinals game from last week. That game I didn't enjoy, not because the Buccaneers lost, but because it was bad football. There's nothing quite like watching a really good football game. I would much rather watch the Buccaneers lose a good game of football than a pretty terrible one. I can still get hyped if it's a good game, and I can feel good about my team and the opponent that they played, whereas last week was just a mess. But yeah, this was really good. I feel like both teams will come out of this one feeling positive. It might just take the Chiefs a little bit longer, but it wasn't a poor performance from them overall. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on this one. Definitely one of the games of the year. I'll probably do a top 10 at the end of the year of top 10 games, and definitely expect to see this one in it. I hope it's not, because that means, man, we got some good games coming up. It's between this and the Cowboys-Packers game at the moment. They were both great. So there you go. Let us know, what do you guys think of this one? Do you think Amari Cooper's back? One would hope so. How do you feel about this Raiders team's chances? Do you think the Chiefs may have started a bit of a slide? Give us a shout. We've got the comment section below. Cover Zero Facebook page. You can find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football. And as always, like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. Be greatly appreciated. And check out more of the show. We've got Tuesday, we do the weekly review. Not the weekly review. Well, we do a weekly review. It's a podcast type show. Me, Arnie, Dan. It's always fun to do. So check that out. More reviews, previews going up all the time. And on Monday we do Bucks Banter and the Titans episode. Me and Arnie talking about our teams and their performances. So check all that stuff out. Be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Really, really, really appreciate it here at Cover Zero. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.